Hello everyone who wants to battle for Middle-earth. I am Border, also known as BorderRRR, and good news, I have a script this time for this RTS commentary. Also, the gameplay footage you are going to be seeing on screen was not actually recorded by myself. In order to save time and effort, I went and found pre-existing gameplay of the Battle for Middle-earth and the Battle for Middle-earth 2, and so shout out to the channel Q3-6BN for posting pure gameplay of these games about 10 years ago. And since they last uploaded something about 9 years ago, I don't think they're going to mind too much about us viewing their gameplay here and now. Link is in the description there. So, The Lord of the Rings, The Battle for Middle-earth. Excellent and actually quite innovative RTS games released in the early 2000s, published by EA Games, possibly still known as Electronic Arts back in the day before they stopped being artistic. And the feel of them was basically like Command & Conquer. In fact, these games used the same Sage engine as Command & Conquer Generals, but it's fantasy, it's Lord of the Rings, and it was very good, especially the Battle for Middle-earth 2 and its expansion. And so to give you an idea of how old these games are, 20 years old they are. December 2004, that is the release date of The Lord of the Rings, The Battle for Middle-earth, the first one, which was quite an innovative game because it was simplified. The idea that EA had when making it was there would be a lot of Lord of the Rings fans who would be coming into the RTS genre thanks to this game, and so they streamlined the RTS formula. So the base building was simplified, there's no builder units, instead there's like pre-existing building plots on the map, with extra plots around them, so quite innovative there. Simplifying a game is not necessarily bad. There's also mechanics like merging units together to make kind of combo units, and it had a nice long campaign that followed the films but not too closely, so you could, I don't know, play as Mordor and like destroy Minas Tirith for giggles, as you do. Then 2 years later, March 2006, The Lord of the Rings, The Battle for Middle-earth 2, it actually went back a little bit to a lot of traditional RTS standards. So no more plot-based building, you have your builders and you build anywhere on the map really, and you have resource buildings, which just have to be spaced apart for maximum efficiency. But it was actually better off for it, so they pulled it back a little bit, but in a way that did make the game a lot better than the first one. So absolutely fantastic RTS game. I remember playing that until my eyes hurt. And then, just a few months later, in November of 2006, you have, well, an extremely long title, The Lord of the Rings, The Battle for Middle-earth 2, The Rise of the Witch King, which is a really silly long title for a video game. Something of a weak expansion, really, but still very well received, did improve the gameplay of the first one, departed from the visual style of the Lord of the Rings films in particular, but still very good, and goodness, like, I don't know whether this was early 2000s, and that's how it got developed so fast, or whether EA was just getting in there with the bullwhips and making people bleed at their keyboards. But speaking of EA, so these games were made under license by EA Games. The first one just had the movie license, so just the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films. That's all they could use. But the second game, and its expansion, was made under both the movie and the books. Licensed to use like stuff from movies and the books, the original Tolkien books. And that's why it has dragons and stuff. So, greatly expanded world, lots more material, which is why one of the reasons it was better. But the problem is, the license ran out, and this was a shock to me because I stopped playing that game, well, roughly, I don't know, just a little bit less than 20 years ago. The license ran out, and EA was no longer allowed to sell or distribute any of these three games physically or digitally. So even later, as video game developers and publishers were shifting to a digital marketplace model rather than selling physical CDs or DVDs of their games, they could not put these games on Origin or any other digital distribution platform. And the official game servers were closed on the 31st of December 2010, with the Xbox servers following suit just a year later. So, where does that leave us here? You can still potentially get second-hand physical copies of the game, but you still need a functioning DVD optical drive, and I get the sense that it's getting rarer all the time. Depends on where you are and depends on what's available to you, but most games these days, most gaming seems to be geared towards like purely digital, like no physical media at all. But basically, it's impossible to buy these games first-hand anywhere. So if you want them and you don't have the physical disc, and you can't find a second-hand copy, you essentially have to pirate them. Now, I'm a lot softer on piracy than I used to be, but I'm still not keen on sharing a link directly to a pirate site, but I am going to share a link to the Battle for Middle-earth subreddit, which is where a large part of that community still congregates, hangs out to play and discuss the game. And there's an all-in-one launcher over there, which you can download and, like, play all three of the games. The first, Battle for Middle-earth, the second, and the expansion of the second. And that's all well and good. So, what do we learn from all this mess? So, this is something to remember, to keep in mind, like, with the nature of, like, gaming in general. There's four things that stick out from these games to me personally. Firstly, massive franchises like The Lord of the Rings, which is like over 100 years old, much beloved, very profitable. They're a risk for video game publishers, as if you are negotiating with an entity like, I don't know who like really pulls the strings with Lord of the Rings these days. I really should have checked that. But the Tolkien estate certainly is involved in there. There will be strings attached which might impede the long-term profitability and longevity of a game. So whenever you see a AAA studio take on something like Lord of the Rings, you, I don't know, raise an eyebrow and, yeah, they're taking a risk which is probably will affect the development of the game itself. Certainly the Rise of the Witch King, I feel, that did feel a bit rushed, thinking back on it, playing it. I think, like, this is a little bit... This isn't quite as polished as the first game or the second one. But, speaking of the publishers themselves, EA is notorious, and I'm probably not telling anybody anything they don't know, about focusing on short-term profit. Like, they... Oh man, they rush for a buck, those fellas. They're not all bad, not everything they do is terrible, and they have made some absolutely corking good games, and actually, like, pushed gaming in a positive direction multiple times, but they do, man, they focus on the short term and the short-term profit, which means that either on purpose or just incidentally, they will condemn their own intellectual property, or their own product, I should say, to obscurity, and, like, the ones in charge probably won't care about it. Like, the big wigs at EA, they probably don't give a hoot that they closed the servers down 10 years ago. And that, unfortunately, means that preserving games, like the genuinely good games, and also the ones that we should remember, if only to point at them and say, like, yeah, don't do it like that. Preserving these works of art for posterity is not their priority. That's not what they're in the business for. I'm certain that somebody at EA, multiple people, would have been kind of bummed out back in 2010 about having to shut down the game servers to the Battle for Middle-earth, and also, like, not being able to sell any more copies of them. But, like, you know, the ones absolutely in charge, the bigwigs, they wouldn't care. Which moves us to the point, like I mentioned earlier, that I've gotten softer on piracy in my old age. I've just gotten softer in general, I guess, particularly around the middle. But piracy is not nearly as bad as the media makes it out to be. Because if it wasn't for the online torrents, this game, the Battle for Middle-earth, and the sequels, and many other games like it, this game would be completely unreachable. Like, if you only found out about this now, if it wasn't for people being naughty, and, essentially pirating the game, like, back from the very beginning, like, you would never be able to play it. And the thing about video games is that, as an art form, you don't fully get it until you play it. It's not like a film in which you watch it, or a painting in which you look at it, or a piece of music that you listen to. You gotta play it to really get the full experience, and denying that to people for, well, the rest of time is, well, a bit of a bummer, honestly. And you will we will lose ways of making games which are genuinely very good. And on a brighter note, the community is ultimately what keeps a game or any work of art alive, because I'm shocked looking into the subreddit for the Battle for Middle-earth. There's recent posts in there. Just a year ago is when they managed to compile all 3 games into one launcher. You download all 3 of them. You can launch any of them from the launcher. I have not tried it myself because, like I said, I went and found some old footage of the game in order to save time. But I'm genuinely tempted now. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. But it is good to know that the option is there. And if any of you go try the game now and go hang out on that subreddit, like, you know, I don't know, tell them I say hi and, like, thank you so much for what they do. That'd be really cool. And as a final note, as a New Zealander, I am obligated to remind everyone that the Lord of the Rings films were filmed here, and cheers for that. So, I hope you enjoyed this RTS commentary. It's a lot more focused and short than the ones I've done before, because like I said, I've had feedback that a script would be a good idea, and you know what? I can't argue with that. This script did help. And please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Do check out my other videos, and I will see you next time in RTS commentary. Farewell.